right, ladies and gentlemen, we are Facebook Live, and also this will be on BigTimeProWrestling.com, our YouTube channel. Please go and subscribe, and friend, request the YouTube channel, share it. Big Time Pro Wrestling. Myself, Freddie Cornell, the promoter of Big Time Pro Wrestling out of Huntington, West Virginia. We do shows around the state of West Virginia and the state of Ohio, and also we partnership in the state of Kentucky. I'm joined myself with the commissioner of Big Time Pro Wrestling, Christopher Angel, right next to me. Excuse me for that. Also, a big shout out and thank you for our Cam, who runs our BigTimeProWrestling.com site. Randy E is with us as well, and he will put this up on the YouTube channel no later than the next 24 to 48 hours, and he will share it also on our Facebook page right here. Ladies and gentlemen, right now we are joined with none other than, it's been so far a great weekend, Hank Hudson. How are you doing, my friend?
Oh, great, Freddie. All this good food you fed me over the weekend. I'm full and ready to talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hank Hudson has been around for many, many years. He actually, came on this Memorial Day weekend and joined myself and my family right here at my home. This is where this is taped at, by the way, as Chris Angel always says, Cornell's Castle.
Castle Cornell.
Castle Cornell.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess he called it. You can look over there through the window right there. We got a pool and all that stuff. But hey, this is about Hank Hudson right here. Hank, we're going to start off with this is our very first Q&A shoot interview. We got you coming up, and we also, here in a couple of weeks, we got Jimmy Vite, the Boogie Woogie Man, will be joining us as well on June 6th. Then we are in the talks with a lot more talent that we're going to be doing this with. But, you've been a good friend to Big Time Pro Wrestling. You have been our ring announcer, our voice, for, I believe, the last 4 years? Am I correct?
About 3.
3 years? I think this is going on 4 years. Am I correct, though? 3.5, 4 years? Who knows?
Many good shows.
Anyway, I knew you from the past. I always heard of you and stuff, but I'm glad you got on board right here with Big Time Pro Wrestling. The fans loved you, and you actually became a good friend of mine, to a lot of the Big Time Pro Wrestling rosters, but you actually knew some of them in the past. Let's start off right here. Where exactly, you're from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, tell me some about your childhood, your parents, your mom and your dad, your brothers and sisters. Was they involved in professional wrestling whatsoever?
None whatsoever. My father, he was a railroad worker for 39 years for Pennsylvania Railroad, New York Central, Conrail, etc. And he started taking me to the matches because, I was too young to go myself. He wasn't, a fan at all. He just did it for the love of me. My mother, when I first started wrestling in 1965, watching the local studio wrestling on WIIC TV Channel 11, and my mother would tell me, "Why do you want to watch that? Wrestling is the lowest of sports. Guys only go into wrestling, because they can't make it in football or boxing." And I would correct my mother. I said, "Wrestling is not the lowest of sports. Roller derby is." But yeah, she didn't want me watching it at all. She thought, it was too lowbrow. And my other sisters, my older sister never was interested. My younger sister, I was taking her to the Civic Arena for a few years. She liked it. And when she got married, she would go during the Attitude Era and WCW Nitro Thunder era, she would go with her husband, or watch it on TV every Monday and Thursday. But mostly I got into it myself. I watched my classmates in my elementary school were always talking about it, so I gave it a look and got hooked.
Oh, okay. And now, you growing up in school, did you play any sports yourself?
Nah, we had a poor Catholic school. We had no teams or anything like that. And when I started high school, I went to the same high school later that Dan Marino went to in Pittsburgh, and earlier Sam McDowell, the pitcher for Cleveland. But me, I was too much of a runt to make any of the teams, so I was mostly a spectator.
So good. Okay, and so so you think it was around middle school or high school you started getting interest in professional wrestling, going to the matches, or what year you think was around about?
Well, spring '65 is when I first started watching, and then my dad got his days off changed, and he was off Friday nights. He always worked 3 to 11 shift in the afternoon, so he started taking me to many of the shows in late 1966. So that was my first live action. And then later on, I got old enough. I was a sophomore in high school. I went with a friend of mine, so I didn't have to have my dad home to take me to the matches. And I went like a period from around March of '68 to March of '98, 30 straight years. I didn't miss one match at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena, one monthly show.
Well, actually, so do you think you go? So you was born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Now, so I guess you're a big fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm assuming, right?
Oh yeah, I used to go to games where they let kids in for $1. That's when they were losing all the time. You can't get in for $1 anymore.
All right, and how about the Major League Baseball team, the Patriots? I mean, are you?
Oh yeah, my dad loved the Pittsburgh Pirates. He took me to my first game in 1960, a doubleheader. That was the year the Pirates won the World Series on the Bill Mazeroski home run. Yeah, I was only 7 years old then. Yeah, I've been a Pirates fan forever.
Okay. Now, what was your very first? Do you remember your very first wrestling event that you ever attended?
Oh, it's easy to remember. It was November of 1966. It was Bruno Sammartino. Back then, he was the WWF, Worldwide Wrestling Federation World's Champion. He defended against Crusher Lasowski. It was a double bloodbath. They were ramming each other's heads into the ringside tables. I think Bruno went berserk and got disqualified. So they had a rematch the next month, but my dad couldn't take me that night.
Now, did you ever grow up in, around the areas of the other professional wrestling legends that's from that area?
Here's a trivia. There was like 3-star wrestlers and a promoter lived like within a few blocks of each other in the North Hills section of Pittsburgh. Okay, Bruno lived on Goldsmith Road. Luscious Johnny Bowing lived on Park Place. Baron Cicluna lived out there. I don't know the street or road he lived on. And promoter Gene Dargan, he was like one of the local promoters for the WWF. He lived on Seabrook Road. So there was like 4 wrestling figures who lived within a few blocks of each other.
Where was Dominic DeNucci?
Well, no, he lived in the next county.
Oh, okay.
He lived around maybe 30 miles from Pittsburgh, northwest in Beaver County.
Yeah. Did you ever have a chance to introduce yourself to him?
Oh, to Dominic DeNucci? Oh, I worked on shows that he promoted. He used to promote shows. He opened his wrestling school in the 80s, and Guido Mongol already had a wrestling school in another county next to Pittsburgh. He used to run shows, Dominic, with his own shows, co-promoting with Billy Berger. He was a WWF jobber. And some of Guido's guys from his school would be on the show, too. Oh, yeah, I worked dozens of shows that Dominic promoted, refereeing or ring announcing, whatever you needed that night.
So, how about the other stars that was around that area, like Johnny? You said Johnny Biden. Did you ever introduce yourself to him and stuff?
Oh, I rode in a car with him a few times. In fact, one time one of the times my car broke down, my alternator went. My car went dead like 3 miles from like the next exit. We had me, him, and like another 400-pound wrestler. We had to walk like 3 miles just to get to a payphone.
So, how was he? I mean, I heard stories about Johnny.
Oh, he's funny as hell. Yeah, he's one of the most enjoyable people to ride a car with. He's always looking for a ride, Johnny. Well, rest his soul. You had to ask him 3 or 4 times to get his share of the gas money. He finally would give in and like give you a few dollars that we wanted. But oh yeah, he was a fun guy. Oh yeah, funny as hell. Yeah.
Okay. How about Shane Douglas? A lot of the, he's up there in your area too. I do know that you mentioned before that you knew Shane before he actually got his big start.
Yeah, I didn't watch his first match. I was a viewer at his second career match, and I ring announced his third and probably a vast majority of his first 50, because most of his early shows were with Dominic. Either Dominic promoted or Dominic got him booked on a show. I know Troy for Troy Martin, his real name for since the beginning.
How was he growing up in the business, and you start him from the start? How was he? Of course, he went to the NWA and all that, and then Did you know him when he, went to work for Paul? I mean, up in that area, and up in the New York, New Jersey, and all that area?
Yeah, well, here's how he got started. Dominic Danucci got the UWF, the Bill Watts UWF out of Oklahoma. He got it on TV on one of the UHF channels. And Dominic ran 2 tours with UWF guys. They'd send up maybe 5 or 6 people. Then they'd use all his students for the undercard. And Eddie Gilbert was the booker at that time. He came up on both tours with Missy and other wrestlers. And Eddie Gilbert liked what he saw of Troy Martin. He was Troy Orndorff, jumping Troy Martin. He used different names. And Dominic took him down to Oklahoma, and he was just barely there. He changed his name to Shane Douglas. That's Eddie Gilbert gave him that name, and it made him. I think it was the UWF TV champ. He made him almost immediately the champ. That's what where he got his start. You always seen a great potential. Like Mick Foley and Shane Douglas were 2 of Dominic's students. They wrestled each other a lot. All the other guys were good. Don't get me wrong, but they were head and shoulders above the rest of them, as good as the other students were at Dominic's school. Dominic had a lot of very good students for indie guys.
Okay. All right, Chris Anderson, you got a few questions that people was asking?
Yeah, I actually do. Hank, one of the things that I know you and I talked about a long time ago was you almost were like a reporter for, I know some of you said you worked with one of the wrestling magazines to give the folks a rundown of the cards. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, the wrestling magazine I like the best, it only came out quarterly, 4 times a year, was Ring Wrestling. It was a sister publication of the Bible of Boxing Ring magazine. It only came out 4 times a year, and in the back pages, like in the boxing magazine, they had pages of results and from local arenas, like an agate small print. And every time I'd seen her, they never had anything about Pittsburgh. And I thought you had to be like a paid reporter and work for the magazine. So just on a whim, in 1974, I sent in the results of a bunch of Civic Arena shows, and figured, and I never even heard from them, So and then a friend of mine called me. He said, "You got something in this magazine here." And I started sending stuff into them every from 74 to the end of 79 when they quit publishing the Ring magazine published version of Ring magazine. I think they put one more issue out around 3 or 4 years later. I had something in, but I think they sold the magazine to Norman Keatzer, who put out the Wrestling Review magazine later, and it was a completely different format.
And that was just the wrestling side. I know there was a boxing publication.
From Ring Mag. Oh yeah, that's famous. Okay. That was out probably since the early 20th century.
Right.
Yeah, it was a great magazine, Ring Wrestling. I mean, it wasn't like the Bill Apter magazines where they get a bunch of pictures, then they make up all these stupid angles on their own. I hated that. I like the wrestling, Norman Keatzer's Wrestling Review and Wrestling Monthly and Ring Wrestling were the 3 favorites of mine.
Yeah. Also, too, Hank, I wanted to ask you about. I know in the Pittsburgh area years ago there was a wrestler by the name of the Batman. I know he had the same gimmick as the character Batman on TV. Did you work any cards with him?
No, I never worked. I've seen him many times. He never worked indies around Pittsburgh. Yeah, he started, Bruno Sammartino actually took over as the promoter in Pittsburgh in the fall of 1966, and that's exactly when Batman started wrestling. He had him as his tag team partner, because Bruno, he would defend his heavyweight title, but often he'd have tag matches too, or once in a while Bruno would lose the 3rd fall to the guy who would be facing for the title on the next show. He'd lose by nefarious means, and so he'd get his revenge on the next 1 or 2 shows. Yeah, but Batman was around from around the fall of '66 until in the end of '72, and then he never wrestled in Pittsburgh again.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Another thing that I think a lot of fans ask me, what actually drove you to, or got you to be a ring announcer? I mean, did you ever work any other roles in the business, or were you always a ring announcer? Did you ever timekeep, or how did that come about?
Oh, there wasn't, when studio wrestling died in Pittsburgh in November, what they called the Super Pro Wrestling by then, because it was syndicated to upstate New York and other places in Pennsylvania. When that died in November '74, we had no shows to go to. And I got my first car around that time, so we were looking for other shows to go to. And in Salem, Ohio, they had a promotion, they're an indie promotion, they were running every week of the summer at this country music park. and we just started like, going there every Thursday night, for run 5 or 6 shows. And they were starting to run West Virginia like later. They always needed a referee or a ring announcer, so I just learned right on the job, And then that guy started promoting Northern West Virginia. Billy Berger was the name, William Eichenberger. He's deceased now for probably the last 15 plus years, but yeah, he gave me my start. Bill Berger and Clarksburg and Elkins, West Virginia. They ran, and he ran with Dominic later till the middle '80s.
Right. I also know. Let the cat out of the bag here. You're mentioned in a famous, well-known WWE wrestler's book. Is that? Tell us about that.
Yeah, I always joke with people. I said, when you've been in indie wrestling for 45 years, there's got to be at least one time when you were in the right place at the right time. And well, on June the 28th, 1986, Dominic would bring his students down to West Virginia to go for the undercard. There was a wrestler. He was going to go Cactus Jack Foley. That was the first time I met him. And I didn't know, there was like another guy I hadn't worked with too. And first thing I asked Foley, I said, "Are you Kurt Kaufman?" Because that was the guy who was supposed to wrestle. Because I didn't know one from the other, or neither one from Adam. That's the first thing I asked him. And then he said he was from Bloomington, Indiana. And I said, I mean, there aren't any cactuses in Indiana, and he corrected me like jokingly laughing. He said, oh, the plural cactus is cacti, he didn't put that in the book, but, so he used that Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. See, I was a U.S. postal worker for 34 years, and the job I had at the time was on a sax sorter, and I'd see these sacks for Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, 87901 zip code, and I said that'd be a great ominous name to have for a hometown for a wrestler, and I just gave it to him on a whim. I didn't know if he was just going to be some jabroni that would wrestle like make 2-3 matches and be done. So he used that for like over 10 years, so at least I gave it to a good guy.
Well, that's a matter of fact, that just to let you know, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico is about 10 miles from parts unknown, just to let you know.
No, but there really is such a place.
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah.
I don't know if it's named after the TV show or the TV show was named after it. There was like a show in the 50s, Bob Barker, when he was real young, was the host of Truth or Consequences. They'd run the buzzer like after that.
Yeah. So that's in Mick Foley's book that your name is mentioned. And what is the book called?
Have a Nice Day.
Have a Nice Day.
It's like pages 79 and 80 in the hardcover edition.
Oh, awesome.
It came out in paperback too later.
That's a chat out of the bag for you wrestling fans. If you got that book, look it up there.
You probably could find them at any thrift store. Because they sold over 700,000 hardback at one point, and I used to see them all the time when I'd go to used bookstores. It'd be, have a nice day. You could buy, there's plenty to pick from.
So let me ask you this. Now so we mentioned the exact year you started. When was the very first year you started again?
Oh, I started working shows.
Yes.
Yeah, it was August the 7th, 1975.
1975.
That was a great day for Cincinnati Reds fans, around here, because they won the pennant that day over the Pirates. It's a trivia.
So he did say Reds, and right there's the Reds next to him right there.
Yeah, this is Cincinnati Reds country where we're telecasting from.
So let's see. So you go on to in the 70s to mid 70s. That's when you start. How was you? Give it a 10-year spread there. Did you start traveling and going to a lot of shows in Ohio, West Virginia still, or did you just keep it around the PA area?
I wasn't really traveling for the ring-a-nons. I couldn't work in Pennsylvania until 1989 because they had a very strict athletic commission. It was all in-house partisan politics. You had to know the governor to be the commissioner. The commissioner would pick all his spoil system buddies to be for all the appointments. So I didn't work in Pennsylvania legally until 1989. So I was working Ohio and West Virginia. It was mostly in eastern Ohio and northern West Virginia during those years.
And we move on to the 80s. Where was you at in them years?
That's when I met Guido Mongol and Dominic DeNucci, and Guido was running shows in PA, but I couldn't do the ring announce or the refereeing, but we taped for cable access, and we had cable access shows on Pittsburgh for several years.
Okay, and then we move on to the 90s. Then I knew that's when you got your big start and started traveling a lot more, correct?
Yeah, Cleveland All Pro Wrestling by JT Lightning, one of the stars of the promotions, who unfortunately passed away 2011 from throat cancer. But
Yes.
yeah, that was a great 17 and a half years. He used a lot of guys before they were even stars that I met, like Edge and Christian and Rhino and like Hollywood Johnny Swinger, and and then he'd use a lot of guys, like other indie groups do.
Johnny Gargano and all them. Yes.
Yeah, Johnny Gargano was trained by JT Lightning. He started in 2005. I mean, he's been wrestling 15 years, Johnny Gargano. He still looks like a teenager. He hasn't aged.
20 started with them. Yeah, you mentioned JT. I mean, myself, I met JT around, I think it was 98 myself, 97. Met him down in Kentucky, and a great guy, down to earth, took the business very serious. As you know, I mean, you said Cleveland All Pro Wrestling. I mean, he got he used a lot of stars that wasn't on TV now, that now made a big name for themselves. And a lot of people, recognize him today and tell him where he come from. And unfortunately, as you know, I mean, as you said earlier, that JT unfortunately passed away of cancer. And but I knew you did at least 95% of his shows, didn't you?
Yeah, he asked me to work every one, but when he moved to Saturdays, sometimes I had other bookings. But yeah, he might have worked a good 175 or 200 shows. He might have ran in that 17 and a half years.
Turner's Hall, correct?
Well, that was just one of the places he ran. He ran at the West Park Party Center on West 130th and St. Michael's Russ Hall. He even ran in a big abandoned movie theater for a couple of years, a variety theater. Yeah, he had a number of locales. He ran this Masonic temple in Lakewood, Ohio. That's a suburb just west of Cleveland. Yeah, he ran a number of places. He always managed to get a decent crowd. He never had like 20 people like you see some of his promotions. He had a following. He never got rich because he always overbooked the shows, I think. He just wanted to wrestle certain people, and he wanted to see certain people, and I think he booked way too many people for what even though he had good crowds. I always wondered if he was losing money.
Yeah. Now, his daughter is in the business today. What's her name?
Hannah. Hannah Lightning, she's going as.
Yeah, and that's JT's daughter. Now, we talked about that too. I mean, I saw Hannah a few pictures, and I do recognize the boots that she's wearing. She's actually got a pair of her father's boots that.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. Yeah, Hannah's a pretty girl. I never look at her boots.
Yeah, I mean, she actually makes them noticeable that they're JT's boots. And I did see a couple shots of her, working in her dad's boots and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, nobody gets over the death of their parents ever, but she's still taking it hard. It's like 9 years, and she still posts about it. She gets depressed, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And we move on to Cleveland. Also, a couple. We can't leave out G-Mo.
Yeah, that's fun promotion, G-Mo.
Yeah, I mean, you've been with him for 20-some years, am I correct?
Yeah, he started in 1996. He was trained by JT Lightning. He trained with him for about a year or so, him and Wally Klasinski. That was his partner in the original. It was G-Mo and Juggernaut in the original Theater of Pain. Then Juggernaut, Wally Klasinski, he was good at business. People liked him. He was real good at getting sponsors. So he more or less phased himself out of the wrestling and went about getting sponsors. And Psycho Mike took over the other half of the Theater of Pain's the only undefeated tag team in professional wrestling history, the G-Mo and Psycho Mike version. They always brag about that.
So let's move on about G-Mo again. You compare the shows to, at the time, was you working for both companies at the time?
Yeah, I was working for both. JT would sometimes work for G-Mo too.
Out of the two, of course you separate the two with, G-Mo at that time dedicated himself, to hardcore professional wrestling. And, I've been on shows with G-Mo, and I know I've been on shows with JT. Do you think that's where the difference was in them two promotions as a fan base, where G-Mo was targeting the hardcore audience since ECW was then hot and heavy, and of course JT, was going up to the new generation, and also, keeping it the old school fashion style. Am I correct?
Oh yeah, well JT's more of the technical wrestling, but JT did have a period where he was doing hardcore on top of the card, like in the late 90s. He was bringing in every show and drawing like 300 at the West Park Party Center. He'd bring in a Madman Pondo, like Ian Rotten. There was guys like Ox Harley and Manslaughter. And there was like other tough brutes, from down at I think it was like Evansville, Indiana, or somewhere where they were running, or I forget where, Jeffersonville, Indiana, or somewhere where they were running those kind of shows. Yeah, JT did have his hardcore period, but for the most part, he'd bring in like Samoa Joe or Nigel McGuinness or whatever Daniel Bryan's name was, Brian.
Danielson.
The American Nightmare or something,
yes.
Brian Danielson, yeah, he'd bring guys like that in too, like Claudio Castagnoli was JT's champion for a bit of time, Chris Hamrick.
Cesaro.
Cesaro now, yeah. And if Tracy Smothers, he'd bring in a lot of people. Like he was a guy they loved to hate in Cleveland. He was so entertaining, but they wanted to boo him, and they did. But Tracy's just so entertaining that they just couldn't hate him all the way. But,
Tracy,
yeah. He had Jimmy Valiant in one time. Yeah. JT and Jimmy Valiant was like the funniest match. I was almost falling off my chair laughing. Doing that spot with like peeing on the fire hydrant thing that that Valiant would do, and all that crazy stuff. Yeah.
Big shout out to Tracy Smothers. You mentioned Tracy. I hope all is well with him. As you know, he is battling cancer as well.
Yeah, that's sad. They miss. I know a lot of people are really. I think are collecting money for him and everything. They feel badly.
I had a privilege of getting with him a few months back, and best wishes to him, by the way. I knew JT, as you know, used Tracy a lot. So, and you mentioned Jimmy Vine. That was a classic match with him and JT. What you're talking about there. Also, so back to Gmo. So they kind of split their ways, and Gmo started his own promotion. Now, do you think, how would you put this? You said JT, so they was on a good friendship, and they used talent back and forth?
No, JT was like mad at Gmo here and there. He wouldn't work for him, and then he'd go back. As long as Gmo was paying him, he'd work for him. And JT's team would usually put over Gmo and Mike, to keep their undefeated streak going.
Awesome, yeah. Great, two good promoters there. I know them both, like I said. So we're going to move on, and now back to. We'll go on to the 2000s stuff. Did you? I know you said you worked for the Postal Service. When did you retire?
In 2009. I had 34 years.
2009. Is that when you decided your schedule became more open then, and started hitting the road a lot more?
No, I was really going everywhere I wanted to go, even when I was a postal worker, because I was one of the senior people in the building. I could usually get the days off that I needed, like a Friday or a Monday if I had like a long trip or like 3 or 4 nights in a row or something. I just was able to rest a little more. I'd drag into work when I was working like 2 hours sleep sometime. I'd be working a show in Cleveland, getting home, getting 2 hours sleep, and then driving to work the next morning. I didn't have to do that anymore.
One of the fans here is asking a question about the Honky Tonk Man. You've been on shows with him, and how was it?
Oh, he's always friendly to me. I've done maybe a half a dozen shows with him, the Honky Tonk Man. Yeah.
Next one is on Owen Hart. As you know, that he fell to his death today.
Yes, 21 years ago today. Yeah,
yes, 21 years. Wrestling fans asking about him. Owen Hart, do you? When he went back to the Blue Blazer gimmick, do you think, you saw the documentary, what is your thoughts on that?
I haven't watched the thing on Vice yet with him, but what's funny, what I remember, when I found out he died, I was working a show for a group in Cleveland called Extreme Futuristic Wrestling, EFW. That was the very first show I worked for. It was on a Sunday night, like May the 23rd, 1999. And somebody come to the show, like run into the show that wasn't, in the middle of the show, and was telling everybody Owen Hart got killed on the pay-per-view. People bullshit like so much that, I thought maybe they were lying. No, that isn't true. But we found out during that show that it was true.
Henry Kermowski.
That sounds like my name, real name.
Yeah, Henry. They're asking you, have you ever worked any shows with any of the Hart brothers?
Worked any shows when they had what?
Any of the Hart brothers?
Oh, the Hart. No, I worked with Davey Boy Smith Jr. That's maybe about as close as. No, I never worked with any of the Harts. I don't think. Never Brett or Owen or Jim Neidhart. I guess he's a in-law. I worked with him.
You mentioned them too. How was they? Let's go with Jim Neidhart first. Do you remember the show you worked on?
Oh, it was like here and there, like show. There was no like really memorable matches. You know, it was just business. Like I went up to him, shook his hand, and got his information. You know, really no small talk or anything. Yeah.
How was he with professionalism then? I know you heard, and I mean I heard good things and bad things about Jim at the time.
Well, he did a seminar one time. I had a promoter, Rob Mazie. He was running like a weekend in West Virginia with the Rock and Roll Express, but at one school in Shinston, West Virginia, he had a matinee show for the final period for the kids in school that day. It was on a Friday, and part of the show he ran like one wrestling match, and he also had Jim Neidhart was like talking to kids about like not doing drugs and stuff. Like he did like a little seminar, don't do drugs. But really, I really don't bother the wrestlers, you know, the big names. I'll introduce myself and, you know, give them their space. You know, if they want to talk, you know, there's been a few over the years like Bill Eadie, Demolition Axe, and like Ivan Koloff, Bobo Brazil were like really like overly friendly for as big as stars as they were. You know, if they want to talk to me, I'm more than glad to talk to them. Yeah.
Did you? And you mentioned once again about Davey Boy Jr. When you saw that, was he pretty socialized then or not?
Not yes or no. I just really got his information. That was only within the last year. He wrestled in, I think it was Elyria, Ohio. No, not Lorraine. Yeah, he wrestled J-Rock in the main event, a local Cleveland guy. Yeah, they had it was only like a 7 or 8 minute match. It was like okay, but like I said, I don't really talk that much with most of the wrestlers unless they really want to talk to me, and then I'm glad to do it.
Question, Chris Angel?
One of the things I always want to know is, did your work in the business stay actually in that area? Did you ever like go to other states like Indiana or California or anything like that?
I've worked in 7 different states, but most of them, the vast majority, was Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Because I could work in starting in Pennsylvania, starting in '89. Finally,
right.
they lowered the restriction. I mean, they still have athletic commission interference and supervision, but at least, you know, they can hire their own ring announcer, referees, etc. I only worked in New York State just 4 times, in Maryland twice, and Indiana once. You know, I haven't really traveled that far, you know, because a ring announcer, you know, they can get, ring announcers are a dime a dozen. They're not going to pay me all that travel, you know, to go like half across the country unless I'm Michael Buffer, you know, but I'm not, you know, so I always joke to people, I'm a poor man's Michael Buffer.
Well, I mean, I know that you know, you take down a lot of results. I saw on your Facebook page. I mean, you go back to the 70s and all the way up
In the 60s.
to the 60s. Yeah. I mean, by getting all the results. I mean, was that I guess that was a hobby that you did also. And one thing we talked about, me and you, as a result, so like at Jimmy Snuka. I know you did a couple shows with him.
Oh, many with him.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been on shows with Jimmy myself. Did he, when you did his information or talk to him and stuff like that, did he give you any kind of trouble or anything about you know, his information at first? Because I know he was bad about having his own locker room. And one of the questions also that we had for you, I mean, as you know, the documentary about his girlfriend.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet either. I know the story though.
Yeah, you know the story. I mean, a lot of people thinks it's true. A lot of people thinks it's not. And I know that you know, as a professional, I mean, you did a lot of shows with him and stuff. I mean, how was Jimmy? Have you ever saw him at any tempers, any flare-ups at any of the shows? And also when he had other mates with him.
Not at the shows. He worked for Gima would bring him in a lot. Like there used to be a guy called the Heavy Metal Maniac that used to drive Snook, and he'd be his opponent a lot of the times. And then there was a guy later called Strangler Nick Maddox that would make sure Snooker got to the show. And well, you know, Gimo, they like to party up there, and Snooker likes to party. So they'd sometimes come in a night early, and they'd they'd be all happy with each other. There was never any problem with Snooker. He'd call me brother, and in fact, I went to a county fair show one time in Meadville, PA, just to watch. And I was walking past the gimmick tables, and I saw Snooker there from a distance. But you know, I don't want to bother him. You know, he had like people lined up, you know, to pay him money and stuff. And he said, "Brother, come over." You know, he recognized me from far away. He didn't know my name. He always called me brother. You know, yeah, I was like, you know, proud he'd remember me when he sees me like maybe every 3-4 months or something. Yeah.
And I know you've been on a lot of shows that, how do you feel about people using the doink gimmick? I know you know a couple yourself that does that, you know, gimmick still. Do you look back at it, do you think nowadays when they use it, do you think it's, you know, disrespectful, in your opinion, to Matt and, you know, Steve Lombardi? I mean,
well, Matt didn't really have a good reputation, you know, you know, in real life. You know, I don't want to expound on that, but because Matt lived around me in Pittsburgh, he was living in Elwood City, PA, for a couple years. That's maybe like 35-40 miles from me, and he didn't have a good reputation up there. There was trouble with the law I won't go into, you know, and the WWF, they weren't minding him doing doink until he was starting to get like AP, you know, Associated Press like things, you know, going all over the place, stories on him, you know, problems he's having with the law. You know, so 2 local guys were doing it that you probably know. There's one out of Butler, PA, TC Reynolds, who was just doing it to the last like year or 2. And Preston Steele, I don't think's doing it anymore. He's out of the Youngstown, Ohio area. I mean, they were very good at doink. You know,
right.
I guess the WWF never bothered them because they were. You know, Preston was a county deputy policeman. You know, he was impeccable record. You know, TC's a good guy. You know, so I don't think he minded people doing it. You know, for charity shows and stuff. You know, they weren't giving it a bad name, but Matt Bourne was giving it a bad name. And then some of the other, I saw some pathetic looking doinks. There was like one guy, I won't mention, right down here, not far from here, in Charleston. I seen pictures of him. I said, my God, you know, that's the worst looking doink. I mean, he's a nice guy. He's a good referee, but he's a lousy looking doink.
We won't mention no names, but we know that.
Yeah.
Now, Matt's father was Tony Bourne.
Oh yeah, I've seen his pictures in magazines for years.
He was a fine wrestler.
He's a mean looking guy.
Yeah, he was. He made his claim to fame out in the Pacific Northwest.
In Portland area,
yeah, for Don Owens.
So you mentioned also a lot of the names that you work with, just off the bat. You know, we're just going to name them off, and you just tell us what you think about him and stuff like that. Let's go with Bobby Fulton. Fantastic.
Oh yeah, he's another guy who was in the right place at the right time. He started out, he's only 16 years old. Him and there was a local wrestler in Pittsburgh. They were pen pals or something. And Billy Berger was like running in Clarksburg. This was like June 17th, 1977. And this local guy I knew was wrestling, told Fulton to come. He never wrestled before in his life, and his dad, Fulton drove with his dad. He's only 16 years old, from Chillicothe, Ohio, all the way to Clarksburg, West Virginia. And there was like another guy that never wrestled. He put out a WFIA award-winning newsletter for 2 years, Joe Shedlock. He never wrestled before. It was like on his bucket list. He only had like 3 matches in his whole career, total. But so him, Mad Dog Michaels, that's what Joe Shedlock used, and Bobby Fulton was Bobby Fulton. And yeah, they had a match, and then other wrestlers like interfered or something in favor of. Mad Dog Michaels was the heel, but yeah, that was his first match out of the blue, and then he was coming for Billy Berger for a couple years. Then Bobby got hooked up with Fred Curry, and then he ended up going down to Memphis, and guys like Bill Dundee were helping him get in, because Bobby Fulton was real chunky when he first started, but when he got down there he said that Bill Dundee taught him nutrition and how to get in shape, and that's how he got to be a star.
Absolutely. Yeah, Bobby's I have really nothing bad to say about Bobby, really. I mean, Bobby's actually a great guy and a great promoter as well.
Yeah, hard work, money, like on the show. He's trying to make everything perfect.
So you mentioned also Brian Pillman Jr. that we was talking about. Do you think his style is a little more like his dad's, or do you think it's upcoming more?
Well, I've seen him maybe half dozen times. Yeah, he's more babyface now, like Brian Pillman was in the beginning. Then he turned like he had that crazy gimmick later. Brian Senior. But yeah, Brian Pillman Jr. got a huge upside. He's a good-looking guy. What I've seen in him in the ring so far, he's very good. Yeah, if he keeps his nose clean and keeps working hard like he's been, he's got a huge upside. Especially with AEW competing with WWE now. He's a guy that could really go big with AEW, or AEW, I should say.
Absolutely. Well, we are also, since you're almost a little over 3 years with Big Time Pro Wrestling. What is your thoughts on the three, being here and being in, a part of Big Time Pro Wrestling? How do you, think that the matches are going, and anything that you think, in your opinion, that can be improved, or to go to another notch?
Oh, I like coming out here especially because you haven't forgot about the super heavyweights. Like WWE is just killed off like the big man. They got little guys like Seth Rollins. They'd be enhancement talent. Seth Rollins like 20 years ago. You got big guys like the Jurassic Juggernaut Vince Steele, and Showtime Chris Miles and legendary Larry E. You got the big Rock'em Sock'em super heavyweights. Those are the guys I like to see. I don't mind. I like the high flying guys like 1 or 2 matches, but I don't want the whole card doing that. I like the big Rock'em Sock'em guys, and you got them here in Big Time Pro Wrestling.
Yeah, Chris Angel mentioned even
Onyx.
Yeah, Black Superman Onyx.
Yeah, Black Superman Onyx. Yeah, you got like a number of them. Well, Excalibur, he retired now, but he was a good big guy.
In Europe, Vince Steele is the current BTW champion, as you know. Do you, someone that you like to see him in the future to go one-on-one with Big Time Pro Wrestling?
Oh, I mean, there's not too many like real big heavyweights around. I saw this Barrington Hughes on a show I did for Scott Bunner in Cleveland. Yeah, he'd be a good guy to go against. He works for one of those other like bigger indie organizations. I don't know which one. Barrington Hughes. I don't know if you heard of him. He was pretty good.
A lot of a fan just touched base here and says we'd like to see you just mentioned him, legendary Larry D versus Vince Steele. How do you think that match would be?
Oh, yeah, you got to have that like sometime in the future, definitely. And the Beast Man out of the Wheeling, West Virginia area, he's he's been down at Big Time Pro Wrestling before. Yeah, I'd like to see him against any like big heavyweight.
Yes, Beast Man's actually a good piece of talent. All right, Chris Angel, any more questions for you?
No, I think that's about it, Freddie.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is Hank Hudson, the legendary ring announcer. Thank you all for tuning in. Before we go, I'd like for Hank to stand up for one time for us. Come on, stand up.
It's hard for me to get up.
Come on, get up. As you can tell, he has the new shirt, Big Time Pro Wrestling Lord of the Rings. You can turn it around, and it even has Hank Hudson's shirt name on it. All the wrestling superstars, majority of them also, Big Time Pro Wrestling.com.
My name too.
Yeah, Hank Hudson. Before we take it away and take it home, once again, don't forget to join us for Saturday, June 6th. Also, June 6th, it's going to be at, between 11 a.m. and noon. We'll have handsome Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant on our next Q&A and shoot interview right here, as Chris can say it,
Castle Cornell. Castle Cornell.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are very excited to get back to ringside with you all. Hope everybody is staying safe. I mean, things are starting to reopen. The coronavirus 19, it's about to drive you crazy. I mean, when you talk almost every other day on the phone,
yeah.
And
I'm having withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah, withdrawal symptoms. We're looking to get back to action really soon, and also our school's getting ready to start back up and running right here in Huntington, West Virginia. be plugging that as well. So before we go, we like to the fans want to hear it, and I want to hear it. Go ahead and do your spiel.
You want me to do the hardcore one I do up for GMO?
Absolutely. Let's go. Yeah, do a tribute to GMO. Yes.
Okay, this is the one GMO likes the best. Are each and every one of you prepared for some knockdown, drag out, pillar to post, wall to wall, rock 'em, sock 'em, chair bashing, table smashing, head splitting, blood dripping, extreme, hardcore, kick ass wrestling? Everybody, let's hear it!
Let's hear it. Thank y'all very much. God bless. See you next time.
All right.